You want to know what I remember most? It wasn't the fire or the sound. It was the morning before it all went wrong. I'd been up since 3:17 a.m. I know the time because I'd been staring at the glowing red digits of the alarm clock for 43 minutes before I gave up on trying to pretend I might fall back asleep. The baby had been restless again. Little kicks, pressure like she was shifting in there trying to find the one position I couldn't adjust to. I'd gotten used to her movements these last 5 months, but these nights, when it was like she was trying to tell me something, they kept me awake long after the flutters stopped. She wasn't due for another 4 months, but she'd already changed my entire world. Her diagnosis had come at the 20-week scan. Words I'd never heard before in the same sentence. Severe developmental disorder, motor function impact, unlikely independent mobility. It was a blur. Me sitting on the crinkling paper sheet, my husband's hand gripping mine so hard I thought I'd bruise. The doctors were careful, gentle. They talked about care plans, specialists, support systems, but underneath all the medical terms, I heard the one thing they didn't say. She'll need you for everything, for as long as she lives. And I'd decided right then that I would give her every breath I had. That morning, I lay there with one hand over my belly, rubbing slow circles over the spot where I'd felt her last kick. She was my joy, my little firefly. I talked to her more than I talked to most people these days. Across the room, the dim light from the street lamp slipped through the blinds, painting my husband's back in stripes of gold and shadow. He was out cold, one arm flung over the empty half of the bed I couldn't quite settle into. I didn't want to wake him. He worked the early shift at the post office, but he must have felt me moving because he rolled over, hair sticking up in every direction, eyes still heavy with sleep. "You up again?" His voice was rough, still deep from dreaming. "Baby's practicing her kickboxing," I whispered. He reached over, warm hand sliding over mine where it rested on my belly. "She's strong, just like her mama." That was his thing, saying it with this certainty I could almost believe in, even when I felt anything but strong. We stayed like that for a minute. No words, just his palm over mine, both of us feeling the faintest bump under the skin. Then his alarm went off, shattering the quiet. By the time he was dressed and ready, I had the kettle on for tea and was standing barefoot in the kitchen, looking out at the barely there light on our street. Charlotte was still half asleep, just a couple of joggers and reflective vests and the hum of a trash truck a few blocks away. He kissed me twice before he left, once on the mouth, once on my belly. "Take it easy today," he said. "Promise me." I promised. Oh, wow. That promise lasted until 6:15, when I pulled my uniform shirt over my head and headed out to start the route. The school bus depot smelled like oil and wet pavement from the storm the night before. Rows of yellow buses sat under the dim security lights, each with its number stenciled on the hood like an ID tag. Mine, number 418, was in the middle row, still streaked with rainwater. I'd been driving for 8 years. Same district, same general route. Pickups from the South Tryon neighborhoods, a mix of little ones who still carried backpacks bigger than their torsos, and high schoolers with earbuds in and eyes glued to their phones. It was quiet that morning. Too quiet for a Monday. The radio in the dispatch office was playing low, a weather report about patchy fog near the airport. I signed out the bus keys, went through the pre-trip checklist, lights, brakes, mirrors, emergency exits, all muscle memory by now. By 6:45, I was pulling up to the first stop. A little girl named Mia was waiting with her grandmother. Mia was in 3rd grade, always wore 2 different colored socks on purpose, and gave me a rundown of her favorite cartoons as soon as she climbed aboard. Behind her, 2 middle school boys clambered in, arguing about whether their video game characters could beat each other in a fight. Stop by stop, the bus filled. The smell of wet jackets, the squeak of sneakers on the rubber floor, the shuffle of backpacks being wedged under seats. My mirrors gave me slices of their morning world. Heads bent over phones, whispered jokes, a half-asleep boy leaning against the window fogging the glass with his breath. At 7:23, just before the last pickup, the baby kicked again, hard enough that my hand went to my belly without thinking. It wasn't like her usual movements. This one was strong, steady, almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat. The first time I felt it, I thought it was my own heart, but my pulse was in my neck, fast from the rush of the last stop. This one, it was deeper, like it came from inside her. A hard, slow thump. Another. Another. I kept my left hand on the wheel and laid my right across my belly, feeling each steady push. It wasn't kicking, not really. There was no shifting or fluttering like usual, just this drumbeat, calm and certain, like someone knocking on the inside of me.
From the seat behind me, Mia leaned into the aisle, concerned. "Miss Caldwell? You okay?" I smiled in the mirror. "Just fine, honey. Sit back." She did, pulling her backpack up like a shield, eyes still on me like she didn't quite believe me. I made the last turn toward the high school, traffic light green, just enough morning haze to soften the edges of the street signs. I could see a couple of other buses ahead in the queue. The radio crackled, not dispatch, just static and a half-cut voice from another driver. "Anyone else seeing thing in the..." Then it cut. I turned the dial a fraction, thinking maybe my volume had dipped. No change, just dead air. Up ahead, one of the buses slowed more than it should have. Brake lights flared, holding. I eased mine back too, watching the driver through his mirrors. He wasn't looking at the road, he was looking up. I followed his gaze. Nothing. Just gray sky. The brake lights ahead flickered off, then on again. A car to my right honked, swerved, and clipped the curb. The driver's door opened before it even stopped moving. A man stumbled out, phone in hand, pointing it somewhere behind me. A chorus of kid voices erupted inside the bus. Not scared yet, curious. A few stood, craning to look out the windows toward the back. Sharper than I meant to. "Sit down," I called. "Seats now." But curiosity travels fast. By the time I checked my mirrors, half the back row had phones out, pointing them at something above the last intersection we'd crossed. I caught a flash of it in the far mirror, a shape against the haze, dark and tall, no wings, no lights, just hanging there, like it had grown out of the air itself. The heartbeat inside me quickened. We rolled another block before I heard it, not from inside, but outside. A sound so low it was almost pressure instead of noise. It wasn't like an engine, more like a storm building, the air tightening around it. The kids went quiet. Even the ones with earbuds out were staring toward the windows now. A woman in a sedan shot past us on the left, horn blaring, her face pale and twisted in the same breath. In the distance, sirens, faint, like they were trying not to get too close. The radio clicked again. "Command to all CMS routes, hold position until further..." Static swallowed the rest. I looked at the kids in the mirror. Some were frozen. Some were whispering. One boy, middle school, ball cap pulled low, met my eyes in the mirror. He mouthed something I couldn't read. The light ahead turned yellow. I eased the brakes, stopped. My hands stayed on the wheel, but my right palm drifted down again. The heartbeat was stronger now, not frantic, just deliberate, like it was keeping time with something outside. From up the street, the low-pressure hum deepened. Then a shadow moved between the buildings. Not across the street, toward us. That was when I knew we weren't getting to school today. The hum wasn't coming from everywhere. It had direction. It rolled down the street like it was riding the air itself, spilling between the buildings, collecting against the bus until the glass hummed in its frame. I put my right signal on and pulled to the curb.
The brake hissed loud in the silence. The kids knew something was wrong. You can't fool a busload of them when you've driven the same route all year. Their voices had dropped to low murmurs like they were in church. "Everyone stay in your seats," I said, pulling the gear into neutral. "You hear me? You don't move unless I tell you." Some of the older ones were already trying to angle for a better view, leaning over the aisle. "Sit," I repeated, firmer. "Backs against your seats, now." I unbuckled. The bus seemed louder without the seatbelt across me. Every creak of the frame, every faint rattle in the glass. The heat from the defroster blew against my legs, too warm, but I didn't shut it off. Through the windshield, the street ahead was still mostly empty. A trash can rolled lazily across the crosswalk, like it had all the time in the world. Smoke, light, almost a mist, threaded between parked cars, twisting in lazy shapes before being pulled along with the same invisible tide as the hum. And then, I saw her. She was walking straight up the center line toward us, tall, not human. The shape matched the grainy footage you've seen 100 times now. Matte black skin laced with faint glowing veins, limbs long enough to throw her proportions into something the brain doesn't want to settle on. But there was no stumble, no hesitation in the way she moved. The female form was subtle but there, narrower waist, slightly different taper to the shoulders, and the way her hips shifted with each step. The light in her eyes wasn't a glare. It was a steady, impossible blue that cut through the haze without brightening it. She didn't look rushed. She didn't look like she was hunting. She looked like she was arriving. The heartbeat inside me surged again, once, hard enough that my knees nearly buckled. It wasn't fear, it wasn't pain. It was recognition, and I didn't understand how I knew that. I slid the folding driver's door lever open. It groaned on its track. Cold air, damp with the metallic tang of distant smoke, spilled inside. I stepped down. The pavement felt colder than it should have been for the season, almost soft under my boots, like it had just rained. The kids shifted behind the bus windows, their small faces a row of pale shapes against the interior shadows. I didn't raise my hands. I didn't back up. I moved forward, closing the distance until I stood between her and the bus. Her head tilted, just a fraction, as if taking in the sight of me, of the bus, of the cargo I was protecting. Another heartbeat, and I realized it was in perfect sync with the one inside me. She stopped just shy of arm's length, not abruptly, like she had measured the exact spot to halt before her foot even touched the pavement. The hum around us wasn't coming from the city anymore. It was her. It was in the air between us, deep enough that my ribs caught it, like I was standing inside the skin of a drum. Her hand came up, palm toward me. Not threatening, not summoning. It was the same way you'd hold your hand toward a stray animal. Deliberate, non-rushed, leaving the next move to them. Her fingers were longer than they should have been. The light running through her veins pulsed once, faint, then steadied. I didn't step back. I didn't look away. The heartbeat in my belly was pounding now, pressing outward like it wanted to meet hers. I could feel my own pulse tripping over itself to keep up, my breath falling into step with it without permission. I don't remember raising my hand, but I must have, because one moment I was holding it against my belly and the next it was hanging in the air between us, inches from hers. She closed the gap. The contact wasn't like skin, it wasn't metal, it was both, smooth and cool, but alive under the surface, moving with its own rhythm. When our palms met, the hum stopped. Not faded, stopped. And in the silence, something else bloomed. It began in her hand, a point of heat so small I might have imagined it, right in the center of my palm. Then it spread, a slow, steady warmth traveling up my arm, over my shoulder, down into my chest, and deeper still. The baby kicked, hard enough that my other hand grabbed my belly, but it wasn't the same as before. This wasn't discomfort or shifting, it was alive in a way I can't explain. Every movement purposeful. Another pulse, and I felt something change. Not pain, not even pressure, just addition. Like my body suddenly had to make room for more. I gasped, and for a moment I swore I could feel two distinct rhythms where there had only ever been one. She held the contact a moment longer, eyes on mine. The light in her veins pulsed once more, matching the double beat in my belly. Then she let go. No words, no sign. She simply lowered her arm, stepped aside, and left the road open. I don't remember turning back toward the bus. I just knew the alien was no longer in my path, and the road ahead was open. The kids were still in their seats. Some had their faces pressed to the glass wide-eyed. Others had ducked low, only their eyes showing above the edge of the seats. When I stepped onto the first stair, the sound inside shifted, a collective exhale like they'd all been holding their breath at once. "Miss Caldwell," Mia whispered, leaning into the aisle. "What did she say?" I shook my head. "Nothing, sweetheart. Sit back. We're moving." As I pulled the door lever closed, I felt the metal cool under my palm, not from the air outside, from her. It was only then that I realized my other hand was still pressed to my belly. The beat I felt there wasn't the one I'd woken up with. It was doubled. 2 heartbeats, perfectly in sync, strong and steady. I didn't say a word. Not to the kids, not to dispatch when the radio came back to life in bursts of static and clipped instructions. We rolled forward. The alien didn't follow. She didn't even turn to watch us go. She just kept walking down the street, the hum returning in low waves until the building swallowed her. At the high school, staff were waving buses through without unloading. No one was making eye contact. A man in a neon safety vest was shouting into a phone, his other hand covering his ear like he was trying to block out the noise of the street. "Take him home," annoyed the vice principal told me as I slowed to a stop. "Now. No stops, no questions." On the return trip, the radio was alive with fragments. Blue light just stood there, wasn't attacking. No one mentioned healing. No one said anything about heartbeats. I kept both hands on the wheel, eyes forward, mouth shut. Because how do you explain that? How do you tell someone that a being who doesn't speak, doesn't even blink, stopped you in the middle of the street and touched you like she was adjusting the rhythm of your life? They put spontaneous twin development in my file. That's the official term. I never told my husband the whole story. He was just happy. Happier than I'd seen him since the diagnosis. When the specialists confirmed there was no trace of the developmental disorder, he cried into my shoulder for a full minute before he could speak. I wanted to tell him everything. But every time I tried, the words felt wrong. Like I was trying to describe a dream I hadn't fully woken from. It's been months since that morning, but some nights I wake up the same way I did before it all. One hand on my belly, except now it's on my daughter's. And every now and then I feel it again, that double beat, slow, perfectly in sync, too perfect. The doctors call it coincidence. I call it a reminder. Because when I close my eyes, I don't see the clinic. I see her, standing in the street, chaos burning behind her, hand out like she's offering me a choice I never really had. And I don't know if she saved us or marked us. All I know is that whatever she gave me, whatever she put into them, is still here, still waiting.